All right, I'm thrilled to be here today with Frank DeBenedetto. I met Frank many years ago. He was the founder and CEO of Two River Technology Group, an MSP in New Jersey. At that point, now he's exited that. Fast forward to today, and that's what we're going to talk to him about today. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being here, Frank. I'm going to kind of let you introduce yourself, and because that's a long journey from Two River Technology Group to where you are today. Today, you are the general manager of the MSP suite at Kaseya. And in between, a whole bunch of stuff happened there. So instead of going through your resume for you, I'm going to kind of
Yeah.
hand it off to you, let you introduce yourself, because I want to wind back to that, where you started at your MSP, how you started your MSP, and how it came to the point where you were able to sell your MSP.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me here, Mike. Always a pleasure to chat with you. It's funny, if you ever sat down and try to write the script to your life, like, and you look where you end up versus where you thought you'd be, it's two totally different things. I mean, I went to Rutgers University. I thought I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and 4 years of going through that program at Rutgers and graduating just taught me I didn't want to be an engineer. And I always had this penchant for I like technology. I didn't know what to do with it at the time, so I went into the financial services world. Back then in the mid '90s, that was close to Wall Street. That was where all the success seemed to be focused on at the time. So I wasn't on Wall Street, but I was kind of in the periphery working for a financial services company. And over time, I sort of morphed into that. You know how every office has someone who's pretty good with tech, and then they end up being like the guy everybody that goes to. So I wound up being that guy, and I don't know, it kind of reignited the love I had for, I guess, technology. Um, I started to build like a consultancy on the side, because what would happen is the agents would come to me and say, "Hey, I have a customer, client," and they were all like professional services organizations, like attorneys, accountants, etc. And they'd say they're looking for an IT guy. And back in the '90s, it was so much easier looking at where we are today. Back then it didn't seem easy, but in comparison, it was. And so, I said, well, I've got this day job, but I kind of have this place running on autopilot. So if they'll do exactly what I tell them to do, and I'll charge them a little bit of money to be proactive, to head off the problems, and yeah, I'll work with them. And if they have support needs, then I'll bill it. So it was like a hybrid. It wasn't pure managed services. It was like a little managed services, a little bit of break fix, which, quickly I learned wasn't the best model, but it got me started. So I started building that on the side. And then one day I woke up and said, what am I doing working in a financial services company? I've got this business on the side that I love. I have this passion for. So I think the year was probably around that time. That was probably about 2007, when I officially created Two River Technology Group. I had, like names for it prior to that, but that was like when I went all in. And I think part of the story too, I think I've told you this one, but I got a postcard one day in the mail. So I'm doing what I'm doing. I've got customers. I'm using all these tools, to get the job done. And I get a postcard in the mail one day, and it was addressed to the top dog at Two River Technology Group. And one side was a big hound dog, like with his big nose. And you talk about marketing, right? Like I've been I was in technology marketing toolkit, Robin Robbins, for like 14 years, and learned so much about marketing and used that to my advantage. But I was the recipient of a piece of direct mail that was an oversized postcard with a hound dog. And that made me stop and flip it over and read the postcard. And I realized I found there was a whole world of RMM out there. I didn't even know that existed. And that opened my eyes to the world of managed services. Lo and behold, there's actually a business model for this. And that's how I really got started. So that, between 2007 and 2009 was really when I figured out that there were people that were bigger and smarter and knew what they were doing, and I needed to get myself around them to learn and to grow. So it's probably a really long answer to your short question, but that's how it all got started for me.
Yeah, and when think back to when you started, did you were you thinking, 2007, I'm starting an MSP, I want to one day be able to sell this? Did that thought even occur to your mind occur to you back then?
Not at all. there's a line that says something like "do what you love and it never feels like work." And so I just loved what I was doing, and it was pretty lucrative, right? It was a way you could charge, hundreds of dollars an hour, and I was pretty good at it. So I was just thrilled that I could generate revenue, and then I loved the concept of recurring revenue. And I had already gotten a taste of that before I realized there was a world of managed services, because the very first way I ever generated revenue that was recurring was we installed firewalls. And I thought about it like the same way the alarm system in your house. So if you have like ADT or something, they charge you monthly to monitor it, right? What good is the alarm if it goes off and no one ever hears it? So that was always my thought around these firewalls. So I found a vendor that not only had the hardware, but also had a monitoring component, and I monetized it. So I would put the firewalls in, and I don't know, we charged like $40 a month. And before you know it, I had 10 of them and I was making $400 a month. And I was like, wow, that's more than my car payment. I'm like, this is pretty cool, right? And so that's where it came from. So I had no thoughts of selling it one day. That was far from my mind. I was younger. It was really just around building the recurring revenue, which served me well as I moved forward. I had the hyper focus on that, which of course, when you get towards the end one day, when you go, hey, I would like to sell it, you realize that recurring revenue drives a lot of enterprise value inside of your MSP.
Yeah, and at what point did you decide, maybe I will sell this thing one day?
Yeah. So in 2017, you referenced audit, and I wanted a way to sell more easily. It was pretty good at what we did. I was getting frustrated just because it's hard to convey value sometimes, right? We talk tech, we understand that stuff really well. I have this engineering degree, so I guess maybe it comes a little more naturally to me. But my audiences aren't engineers, and they're accountants, they're attorneys, or financial services professionals. Um, I wasn't doing the best job at conveying the value, and then you confuse them, force them to buy based on price, and we weren't the cheapest, so that didn't bode well for us. So I created audit, and one thing that I thought was kind of cool about the software space is you can build it once and sell it a million times. So it's a little different than managed services where we have to deliver every single month. We're generating that revenue, which is great, but we have to do stuff for it every single month. Whereas software, you can build it once and people will buy it over and over. So again, the ROI changed, and I started to see that that was something that maybe I wanted to spend more time because of the greater ROI. I also started to feel like the stakes got higher, right? Ransomware started creeping in. As we talked about, it was easy. I had a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago, and we were saying, back then, in like the late 90s, early 2000s, you put a firewall in, you had antivirus, and you were set, right? And then you had RMN, maybe you could remotely control and patch, and you were like styling then. Now there's a lot of things you have to be responsible for, right? So many threats coming to you. So I think around that time, I started to think about, maybe it was time to consider exiting. Wasn't as fun. It started to feel like work because I was so worried about my customers, right? That stuff, like people go, what keeps you up at night? What keeps me up at night is the worry that one of my customers would get breached or would have a problem, right? And so much of what we were doing was to keep them safe. I think the stress was starting to get to me. So that's when I started to realize might be time to exit. Also, we sold audit as well to Kaseya, and we had an opportunity to come here and be an executive and also apply my knowledge and experience in a unique way. It positioned me uniquely inside of Kaseya because there's probably only we could probably count on one hand the number of people here, especially executives that actually had an MSP, right? So going from the customer to being on the on the supplier side as a vendor, it was a good opportunity for me to make the jump. So it was really only in the last probably 36 months that this became, a viable thought. Unfortunately, I think I ran the MSP properly, to maximize value there. There were certainly things that I did over the 36 months to to improve that, knowing that that was what I had as a finish line. But I think that's probably the timeline that I was on.
Okay, so let's start with what properly looks like, because I know, and I know you did run a very good MSP. I got an inside look at how you ran your MSP, and the proof is in the pudding. You had a lot of free time to run a software company while Two River Technology Group was kind of chugging along and still growing. So what does properly look like? So for an MSP who's maybe at that point looking at this and going, I don't even know where to start to sell my MSP. I don't even know where to look inside my MSP to understand if I'm in the right spot. If I'm at that
Yep.
point where I can even think about what's 36 months later.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really great resources that are out there. So for me, getting around people like Robin Robbins, Gary Pica, talking to Fred Vacola, like people who actively involved and have been successful in mergers and acquisitions in this space was invaluable, right? So that's first and foremost. I think what properly looked like for me was maximizing my EBITDA, right? So like that's what the buyers are paying a multiple of. So anything that I could do to improve my EBITDA I was hyper focused on probably in the last 36 months of the journey. Um, and that included looking at every expense we had internally and making sure we were getting value from it. If we weren't, we ditched it. It it caused me to also look at my entire stack of tools and to see what we were using. Two things. One was we wanted to make sure that we were getting the value from it, but also that we weren't overpaying, right? So it's one of the first times I ever even looked at it. We just, I always just assume that's a cost of doing business. But the reality is a lot of MSPs, you could probably save, tens of thousands of dollars, right? Which goes straight to EBITDA just by going through that stack. So, certainly went through what I would call a value maximization exercise to look at that. And then as we realigned our stack, we also looked at leveraging the integrations between the tools, making sure that we could do more with less. So, if I could hire one less person in the 36 months, again, that was EBITDA in my pocket, as less money that I was going to lay out, which meant I kept more. So that became the mentality. Everything was with a mindset towards that. Now, for me, also, I knew that when I exited, I knew after a short period of time, I wanted to move on. Everybody's different, right? So there are some of the buyers don't want to see the main operator leave. They want you to move on. And there's plenty of individuals that are in that position. That just wasn't mine. So I had to look for a buyer that didn't care if I was there. And in order to prepare for that conversation, what I did was about 2 years ago, I hired a COO that I felt that I could groom to be the CEO one day. So I wanted to have successor management in place. So that way, when I was selling myself to a buyer, I could say, listen, I'm going to leave in 12 months, but I've trained somebody for 24 months that is intimately familiar with the systems, the customers, and they could take it from here. Now, I wasn't going to vaporize and totally go away, but suffice to say, that helped. So it was just a strategy. I think it's not only thinking, hey, I'm just going to maximize the like what somebody would pay, but it's also making sure your interests are aligned, right? Everybody's got a different idea of what they want to do after the check clears. And I think that it's important to know what you want and start, working your way towards that. So think about it now and then have a plan. You don't want to decide you want to leave a week before you're starting to look for buyers and you have no successor management in place and the buyers say, yeah, this is great, but you got to find somebody. It might delay your sale by a year or 2 years, right? So again, that for me, that was how I planned ahead.
So when you hired your COO, you did that after you knew, okay, I need to do this because I'm going to sell my company.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced something before, which was that I had the time to be able to work on audit. And so it served two purposes for me. One was it was an interesting exercise because I was so hands-on in my MSP, and because I was technical, I knew I was probably a bottleneck in growth, but also involved with a lot of the processes. And the only way I'd ever figure out if this could run without me and where all the warts were is if I stepped back. So I needed a safety net. So hiring a COO and then stepping back allowed me to address the different things. I figured out, oh, I get it. No one knows where what the password is to the firewall management system. Apparently, I've been doing that all along, right? So we made sure we trained somebody and created an SOP and documented it and then delegated it to somebody else. So I was able to do that over and over. So I think the hiring was for a multitude of reasons. One was to help me disengage to do other stuff in the interim. And two is to train that person, so that way they were in a good position. I didn't tell that person that, hey, one day I think you'd be the CEO, but I remember that conversation distinctly when I sat at lunch one day and I said, hey, congratulations. He said, what? I said, you're about to get a really big promotion and a huge opportunity of a lifetime. He's like, what's that? And I said, you get to be the CEO of Two River Technology Group. And I remember the look on his face, and I couldn't tell if he was like scared or shocked or happy. So luckily he turned out to be like overwhelmingly happy for the opportunity. It was pretty cool to see. And I really felt like I had, something of value that he valued, that I was saying, hey, you get to be the steward of this, time to pass it on to you. And I trust you, with the employees and the customers. Again, I wasn't leaving immediately, but it was a cool experience to go through. That was a fun moment. It was bittersweet, but it was also fun if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So let's go into buyers, right? Like at some point you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm ready to put this out there. What does that process look like? And
Yeah.
how did you decide I'm going to even talk to these people? And then how do you keep that away from your customers? You probably don't want your customers and internally your employees to find out what's going on.
Yeah. So I think because of my relationship to Kaseya, I was able to open some doors more easily and more quickly than maybe the traditional MSP would be able to do. I did put it out there confidentially that I was looking to potentially exit. I had already had the opportunity to get around some MSPs that were buyers, like larger in the space. Some were private equity backed because I went to some of the M&A pre-days at some of the Kaseya events, and then even in prior years, I'd been to other ones, just to educate myself, like who are the movers and shakers, who are the ones that I think I should be around. And what I did was I listened, I took a lot of notes. So, if one MSP went up there as a buyer and talked about their strategy, and their strategy was, hey, we acquire MSPs whose owner operators are looking to stay on for the next, 5 to 10 years. That's not me. It's not a good fit. So I didn't want to waste their time, and I didn't have a lot of time either, so I don't waste my own. So I was able to come up with a shorter list of MSPs that I thought I'd be interested in. Again, the interviewing goes both ways. And I just reached out to them and said, hey, I think it'd be, I'm interested. Would it make sense to have a conversation? I gave them basic parameters, right? So, you know, it, I think like the main ones are like, hey, what's your revenue? What's your EBITDA? What percentage of that is recurring? What's the MRR component? Where are you located? How many employees do you have? What are some of the verticals that you specialize in? Those are the big ones. And I think if you could answer that for any buyer, they could tell you in 10 seconds whether it makes sense to sit down for a cup of coffee and have a conversation, or if it's just not a fit, right? So I try to make sure that I was armed with the right data points. Again, they always say know your numbers. I would say, Mike, it was very much wasn't the pressure, but it was very much like Shark Tank. If you watch Shark Tank, like if you're standing up there and you're not sure what your sales are, I got to look up and figure out how many customers I have. You're going to give that potential buyer a impression that you don't know what's going on in your business, right? So I wanted to make sure that I knew, and I did know. It wasn't like I had to like go look it up. I was always pretty intimately involved. But yeah, that was basically it. I reached out to the ones that I thought, would be potentially a good fit. One I totally whiffed on. I won't tell you who it was, but they told me all about their organization, And as soon as I said I was looking to leave, they stopped me. I don't even think I got into the call 5 minutes, and they were like, "Yeah, this won't work." So that was unfortunate. But then, I had probably five others that I were able to talk to, and I enjoyed the process. Somebody else sort of tried to lead me down a path to say, "Yeah, it's miserable, isn't it?" Like that's and I really enjoyed the process. I loved talking about the MSP. I felt proud of what I built, and I liked talking. I loved the questions. I liked answering them, and I was confident. I felt good what I did. So being able to talk about it made me feel like I accomplished something before we got to the punchline, which is, "Hey, here's your offer."
And then how did you end up choosing? I mean, I know you narrowed it down to a few, and it doesn't always come to the person who's going to give you the most. And you alluded to that. Obviously, you're not going to stick around for the next 5 years. That wasn't what you wanted. But how did you at the take us through that process? Because that's got to be hard when you start to look at, okay, here's how much I'm going to get.
Yeah, yeah, it gets exciting. I think when you get to the opportunity to look at the numbers, it gets exciting. And I think if let's face it, you're going to get offers in a range, a tight range. I think, it's not like this, it's more like this, and they do vary. The offers are different, right? So every buyer's got a different way to structure a deal. Some like to give more cash up front, um, and don't like to have equity, like a rollover. Some don't roll over any equity, meaning you don't have any interest in the acquiring entity after they buy you. Um, some want to give you a ton of equity. Why? Because they give you less cash, and the equity is not really worth much right now. So it sounds great. Hey, it's a $2 million of equity, but it's like monopoly money at this point until there's a liquidity event. You don't know if it's really worth 2 million. So there's all sorts of structures to the deal. So you look at four deals, all say for $6 million, and you don't. They're all different. So you have to decide what's the right structure for you. Two, which was super important to me, and it sounds cliche, but it really did matter, was what's going to happen to my employees and my customers. I think some people might say, "Hey, you know what? Like I did my job. I got it to this point. Time to hand it over." And hey, maybe someone else can do a better job, right? So that might be great for your customers, thinking, "Hey, you got it here now. This bigger MSP is going to come in, new sheriff in town, but they've got a deeper bench of help desk guys, and things are going to service is going to improve." So it all just depends on what your thoughts are. But it was very important to me that both of those were going to be taken care of. So, some are pretty clear. Hey, we already have a bookkeeper. We don't need your bookkeeper. So you go, well, I guess that person's not going to make the cut. In some cases, they say, no, we want you to stay intact. Like, we're not going to change anything. Keep running it. So that factored into it for me. And then, the overall dollars and cents, of course, matters. At the end of the day, 5 million is different than 6 million, is different than 7 million, right? And you got to figure out, again, the structure plays into it. But sometimes you say, I don't like that structure, but wait, for $2 million more, maybe I do like that structure. So it's a fun thing to go through. And then ultimately at the end, you tell one of them, "Hey, I got a better offer. I'm going to probably go that direction." And they go, "Well, hold on a second," right? So it's again, you're selling here, and you get to be sort of in control. Eventually, the buyer might say, "Oh, well, that's my best and final, so take it or leave it," which is appropriate. But it was a fun experience to go through. I liked it.
Yeah, and I know you were very successful in the end. It was probably it was an incredible moment to watch. So I'm sure it's an incredible moment to go through. You were pretty fortunate. You mentioned that before, that you were fortunate to have um, the ability to go into Fred Vicola's office and talk to him. The ability to, you met some of the top buyers in the industry. You were able to kind of have some learnings that other people don't have access to. And fast forward to when you sold, that obviously helped you. I don't I got to watch it from the inside, right? So I know you were doing the right things when I met you. I knew that you were running a solid MSP. You went through what's called a value maximization program, which is now available to other MSPs through the M&A concierge platform. And that was a problem you were trying to solve for. So I know you know the other side of it, which is there's MSPs out there that don't have Fred Vicola as a friend. They don't have access to people, being able to ask the right questions of the right people. So let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so all valid points. Sometimes they say it's better to be lucky than good. Like I was very fortunate that my journey led me here to Kaseya. I did know Fred prior. We're both from the same hometown of Middletown, New Jersey. So I was able to counsel with him a little bit more than others could. That's not scalable, right? Fred's not going to put his cell phone number up on the internet and say, "Hey, give me a call if you want to talk to me about potentially selling your MSP." But what happens all of the time here, because we have 35,000 plus MSP customers, we get asked all the time, "Hey, do you know an MSP in New Jersey that might like that wants to sell, that's in this range and specializes in this?" Or you get the reverse. You get an MSP that in New Jersey that says, "Hey, I'm looking to sell. Like, I don't know who to go to. You have anybody that might want to buy my MSP? Here's I'm doing $5 million of EBITDA, whatever. And, like, do you know anybody that might want to buy?" We didn't have anything here to formally address that. So we could do it kind of one off, but, things fall through the cracks. You make an introduction and somebody comes back to you, "Hey, I never heard back from Mike." And now you're in the middle of it. And we couldn't really facilitate it. And we don't like to run programs here if no one is directly responsible and that there's no chance of success. So I told Fred, I said, "Boy, like I had the opportunity to talk with you and it really helped. Not other MSPs don't. It'd be really cool if we built some sort of platform to help facilitate this." And he's like, "I love it." So that was the genesis of the M&A concierge platform for MSPs. I joke around and say, "Hey, you sell one MSP and all of a sudden you're expert." But somebody else said to me, "You sold one more MSP than most of the MSPs have," right? So I guess, they say the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So I'm in charge of that. And what we're doing today now is we're helping facilitate the M&A world of buyers and sellers to help maximize transaction value, right? So if you're looking to sell, what's interesting is we did a survey on all of the applicants to the M&A concierge platform. And the majority overwhelming answer on the seller side is, "I am looking to sell in 12 to 36 months. Very few ASAPs, which tells me that the majority of sellers know they need to get their house in order to get to a point where they could sell. So what could they do? Well, they could go through a value maximization exercise, similar to what we talked about. We have a formalized program within the platform to help them do that. That's number one. Number two is we have the ability to push them into certain programs to get their operations squared away, to make sure that they are best in class numbers, right? So again, that maximizing your value. We're helping them become powered by Kaseya. So they align on our IT complete stack. They're automatically going to save some money. They're going to be more efficient. On the buy side, we're helping the buyers promote their brand within the Kaseya world. So if you're, ABC buyer, you want to tell the MSP community of potential sellers, "Hey, this is what we're all about. This is what we're looking for. This is our charter. Hey, we want people to stay on," or, "No, you can leave in 12 months. We want to give you equity. We don't want to give you equity." We're able to promote that. If a lot of the buyers are already powered by Kaseya, they're already aligned with that stack. They want to buy sellers that are aligned. You know why? Because it's a whole lot easier to integrate than it is to migrate, right? So integration means, hey, you're both using IT glue. It's easy to integrate those two. It's harder to migrate when one of you doesn't, somebody's using something separate, because now there's more work involved. So if we can deliver MSPs that have maximized their value, who are operationally mature and ready to sell, and are already on the IT complete stack and powered by Kaseya, it makes it so much easier for us to pair you with a buyer who's ready to transact quickly, because you're in a more saleable position. So think of it kind of what I did, not knowing I was doing it for a while. I was kind of doing it like bits and pieces. This is a more formalized approach to putting everybody together. So, I mean, that's kind of the way I would describe it. And that was the genesis of this platform.
Cool. And you said, you made the comment that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I got to give you, I don't want to go to let this go to your head, but I got to say that, if I've watched a lot of different MSPs try to sell and buy. I've I've had a bird's eye view in this industry from a unique vantage point. And I can say that I can't think of anybody better to do this than you, because I've watched you from the beginning run an incredible MSP and just do the right things along the way in a meticulous fashion. So you know what you're doing. You are definitely not the
I
blind.
appreciate you saying that. I typically don't take things on that I don't think I could succeed at and that I'm not passionate about. So I have a belief that we're doing a lot of good in the industry. There's certainly an appetite for it. Whether we did this or not, there's a lot of M&A going on. We just feel like like I say, we're in a really good position to be able to help facilitate it. And I think I have the passion for it and the experience, and can definitely drive this forward. And look, we always talked about the why at audit, right? Was to help the customer. I always feel like at the end of the day, who are the MSPs serving? They're serving those downstream customers, the attorneys, those are the ones getting the ransomware, losing data. If we could help MSPs do a better job, they're going to do a better job for those customers to be better protected, right? So it's the same why, it's just a different approach now. Now we're saying, hey, let's take this buyer and put the seller together. They're going to form this successful larger entity and do an even better job for those customers that are there.
So Frank, thank you. First of all, thank you for taking the time to be here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm thrilled that I get to continue this conversation with you, having come over with audit into Kaseya and being part of now the M&A concierge platform. So thrilled to be talking to you, thrilled to be talking to all the other folks out there. Um, with that said, this program sounds pretty expensive. What's it cost and how do I get into it?
Yeah, you would think it'd be expensive because of all the value that we're providing, both on the buyer and the seller side. It's actually totally free. But if you need to be powered by Kaseya, and you're gonna hear more about that in the upcoming months. But right now, there's just an application process. So if you're interested, you can quite simply click on the link that we provide, or shoot the QR code and go to the landing page. We're just looking for buyers and sellers that are committed to going through this process with us and learning and helping us help them. So it's totally free. And just looking for the investment in time. We don't want to waste other people's time. We're doing 40 to 50 calls a week to help both buyers and sellers, all different points of that journey. I think that as long as the applicant is committed, it would be impossible to not find value in this program.
Awesome. With that said, Frank, thank you so much for being here and thanks for watching, folks.
Thanks, Mike.